I used to love figure drawing, so that is the one thing I used to go every week to a class. Well, it wasn't a class, it was just a group of people drawing a figure. And I love that, and I did that I think probably 3 years in a row, just every single week I was there. And I slowly but surely started to abstract the figures and sort of change the colors and sort of merge them into backgrounds. And I often also would take figures from different photographs, invent my own background, and that is where the whole playing and abstraction came from. I think I started there. And then eventually I sort of got more adventurous, and I'd go out into a landscape, and I wasn't really that interested in the view, I was more interested in the impression of the whole landscape. So I'd listen to the sounds, and I sort of doodle and make marks that sort of reminded me of the sounds. I would take just one color of ink and I would sort of copy a shape that I would see in the landscape. So maybe a field, but just the shape of it. Yeah, I did a lot of mark making because it was easy. So you could use pencils or pencil crayons. And then I would come back to the studio and I'd kind of just remember what I'd felt. And I'd just start layering these shapes and marks on top of one another. Sometimes I'd remember colors. From that, I don't know, just sort of have a memory of the landscape in it rather than an actual view of what I'd seen. With color, I mean, I'm fascinated by color, so I make a lot of my own color charts. I take maybe raw umber and I mix it with cadmium red, alizarin red, 2 different kinds of yellows with 2 different kinds of blues, and then I add white to it, so I make all the tints and the shades, and it's a very kind of mechanical process but also very meditative, and I have these lovely color charts which I often refer to. At the moment I'm doing a lot of color work, and then at the end of every day I never throw my paint away. I've got a whole box of little cards here, and then I'll use the leftover paint to paint a little card, so I've got a whole reference of colors that I've used. Yeah, I've always known that people draw to music, or people use music as a way of creating marks, and so I used to do that on a kind of a casual basis and enjoyed it. But then the pandemic came and I think I was a little bit more affected by it than I thought. And so I would come into the studio and feel a little bit unsettled. And once I just put on music, classical music, I took 2 crayons in both hands because I didn't want it to become anything. It just had, and I closed my eyes actually, and I started drawing with both hands. And I found that it was kind of a meditative thing that kind of calmed me down in some way, and I kind of felt more in touch with myself. So I used to do this quite regularly for a few months, and now I don't do it quite as much. More recently I've decided to try and turn them more into drawings. So I use a kind of a mask to get harder edges, and I obviously look a little bit more at the paper, and I choose my colors a little bit more carefully, but there's some quite nice sort of drawings that are emerging out of that process. Lately I've become more investigative of the actual shapes or the elements of art, and so it's more to do with, you know, how can I apply the paint using something, a different additive, what kind of texture will it create? And also in the mark making, letting it speak for itself. And often I have to leave these things for a very long time because they won't resolve themselves, and I get stuck. And then I pull them out again, and then the next minute there's like, oh, I know exactly what to do here. I think as an artist, I would like the viewer to feel inspired, to be intrigued, to be curious, to delve below the surface. I think our urban society has got quite a lot of emphasis on data and facts and fast moving and photographic images. And I think abstract art makes you stand still. The Creative Exchange Program also gives us a lot of exposure. It's a real boost to our careers. We get invited to participate in other festivals as well. It's a real privilege to be part of this program.